Hello and welcome to ClockTower Game Studios. So originally today we had planned to film a painting competition between Callie and I for some Hero Forge minis that you all selected. So the winners of those were this model here for the male model and this model over here for the female model. And the votes for those were pretty close. For the female model, the male model won by a landslide. It was not even a close competition. So the problem came down to my supports, not the printer problem, but my supports for the models, because of the bases on them, weren't working very well, so the model kept repeatedly failing for both of them. So didn't get that printed out successfully, so we can't really paint models that don't exist. With that in mind, kind of changed gears midway through the week and set up to film and review and paint some Anvil Industries Exo Lords. So Exo Lords goes back a long way with Anvil. They originally were in the scale with Space Marines from Games Workshop, but they recently took down the old ones, put in a new range that's more in line with the Primaris Marines. They're much larger, much bulkier, as you can see here. So with that in mind, let's just dig in. I've got a brand new order. This isn't a sponsored video. The guys over at Anvil don't know I'm doing this, and that's fine. I just wanted to give a shout out to some great models and a great company. I'm really excited to put this together, and I was really happy with the results of the paint job, even though I kept it super simple. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll get right into it. So first off, with all of Anvil's model kits, you get the option of whether or not you want bases with them or not. I usually go ahead and get them. They're free, they're good size, quality. The Exo Lords here, since they're in scale with the Primaris, come with the 32mm bases. Most of their other models come with the 25mm. And here you can see some tactical hands. They're given all kinds of hand signals. It's kind of nice to have some open hand options for your characters in particular. Next up, I got some hand-to-hand weapons. I decided to go with combat axes for these guys. I like that they have both options for like holding it like they're actually swinging it, as well as just carrying it, and of course one with no hand at all. Then some pistol grips. I believe these come with left and right-handed grips, which is awesome, because of course you want some characters to have dual wielding pistols, or you want them with a melee weapon and a pistol. Of course I've got some holstered pistols as well, which include conveniently some empty holsters. I liked that. Next up, we've got the actual weapons I picked out. I picked out some Exorcist assault rifle style weapons. These are kind of neat. They're sort of a little more sci-fi looking to me than the standard Games Workshop bolters. I like the way that the front end of the rifle is kind of angled backwards. I think it looks interesting and different. Here I have some matching Exorcist pistols. They're basically the same thing but smaller, and you can see that they have the same notch out system that works for the rifles. And here I've got some extended mags. I did notice that strangely the rifle size weapons don't come with magazines built into them, so you need to have the extras. Now there's a variety of those to pick from, so that works out kind of nice. And then of course you've got the actual Ranger mixed parts. Here I've got mixed arms, mix of firing, advancing, just carrying and holding the weapon. Here you can see a better angle of it. And like I said, those are the two-part system that they do over at Anvil, where they've got like a notch out where the handle of the weapon will be glued. And here's the commander's arms. These are both left and right arms, and they just don't have hands, so you can put whatever hands on them you want. One of my favorite thing about the Anvil kits really is just how modular they are. You can use so many different combinations of parts together. Here you can see the Black Ops helmets. These are the ones that look a little bit like some video game characters. They sort of remind me of the ODST helmets from Halo. They come with night vision goggles though, which I thought was a cool touch. And then here I've bought one heavy weapon. It's an exterminator saw, and it has an attachment for either a chain bayonet or a flamethrower, both of which are cool options, and I intend to put on there with magnets because they've got magnet welds for them. I don't know if you can see that there or not. And here the shoulder pads are. These are called the Ranger pads. They make a couple other different types of them that have a different look to them. I liked these because they have sort of the 2-layer look with a little bit of detail in the middle, so I thought those look cool. And here you can see the different legs and torso options. These were called the Ranger legs. They make an actual like Lords, I believe they're called, but I liked these more. They're a little more dynamic. They didn't look quite as solid, so I liked that. And then here you can see the power plants that go on the back of the torsos. And those fit into place. There's a little square peg on the back of the torsos that these kind of pop onto. They don't snap tight or anything. You still have to glue them in place, but that's not a big deal. So there's all the parts for that, and now we're gonna build one. Alright, so we're going to get started by clipping stuff off the sprue. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about the build process. These are pretty standard marine style models. You've got legs, torso, arms that hold a weapon, power plant for a backpack, head with, in this case, night vision goggles, which is a little bit of a new part. But other than that, they're pretty basic. So I'm just taking my time and gluing the whole thing together, getting it all put together. So of note, is that I didn't magnetize this model, which I usually magnetize my Anvil models, but I decided that I wasn't going to do this one because it's sort of a demo, and I figure I'll need at least one model with just an assault rifle no matter what list I write. So moving on with that, you can magnetize these. They are the same resin that the Regiments and Daughters of the Burning Rose are made out of. It's a nice solid but not, you know, hard resin. So drilling it in for magnets or whatever is going to be pretty easy. The biggest challenge to magnetizing these, especially at the arm, is that they aren't like the Regiment or Daughters of the Burning Rose, in that those two lines have like a socket with sort of a nub that fits into it, and they're relatively flat fitting, so you can just shave that off and then drill in, and then you've got most of a hole already started for the arm socket. So on these, it's more of a ball and joint socket, which is great because it allows for more flexibility in posing, but on the downside, it's harder to magnetize. So that's something to keep in mind when you're getting these. And they'll need a little bit bigger magnet. These are sort of heavy parts, so you'll probably, instead of like the 2 mil that I normally use, you'll probably need like the 5 mil one. And here you can see the night vision goggles I was talking about. These are an absolutely tiny little bit, and you can see that there's a front and the back to them. They have like the lens, the rubberized sort of style look for the part that goes against the visors of their helmets, and then they have the lenses on the front side of it. And then they've got a little tab on the back that you can see fits in like that. That took a little bit to figure out, but once I got past that, this whole thing goes together pretty quick. It took me probably 15-20 minutes to build the whole thing, and that was with setting up for filming and everything. So it really, I mean, most of the waiting time is waiting on the glue to cure, and you can get around that by using an accelerant. So here I'm just gonna finish putting this together. I'm putting the holster on his hip because I want him to be optioned to have a sidearm if I want to play with him, and once I get the shoulder pads on, he's pretty well put together and finished. And here we are. Let's see what he turned out looking like there at the end. Alright, not bad. And there you can see a Games Workshop Primaris Marine done up in the Celestial Alliance colors, and they're pretty much spot on as far as scale goes. I was really impressed with just how matched they were. So now I decided I'm going to go ahead and get on to painting. Here you can see, before we move on to that, there's a normal Space Marine for scale, but once you've seen him next to a Primaris, you pretty well get the idea. I did have some other models on hand to kind of do size comparison with. That's a Daughters of the Burning Rose, also from Anvil Industries. And lastly, I have an old Infinity model, which is more of a true 28mm scale. These guys are full on like twice the size of the true 28mm. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to step out and get this guy primed up, and then we'll come back and get painting done. Okay, let's get started, shall we? So we have our Exo Lord from Anvil Industries. Got him all primed up.
touched up the primer a little bit this morning because I noticed there were some issues under the front. And we're just going to do a quick, simple paint job. So I've got that I'm going to do the lenses on his actual mask. I'm going to do blue. I'm going to do the armor black, so I'm just going to dry brush to highlight that. I've got some gunmetal to pick out some highlights on his gear and the armor. I might try to do the lenses on his NVG gear as well. But I'm going to try and keep this short, sweet, quick, knock the whole thing out in like an hour. So since I want to be sloppy with it and I want it to go fast, I'm going to start with my plain black primed model, and I am going to give it a dry brushing with some uniform gray from Army Painter. This is roughly equivalent to Dawnstone from Games Workshop, if you're familiar. So normally I would use my wet palette for the Army Painter paints, but I'm just going to use my paper towel here since I want to do some dry brushing. So I'm going to start and just put a nice good sized glob down, and I want to do the whole model quickly. So I'm going to grab my Wet n Wild paint brush, makeup brush, and I'm just going to get a little bit of that in there, and I want to just smear that around. So my goal here is, this is going to pick out all of the raised areas, and we're generally going to want to go from the top down. I might go back and do some edge highlighting. Some of that got a little bit heavy. That's okay though. So he looks like dark gray shaded black model. That's what we want. Not going for anything complicated for this one. We want to keep it short, sweet, to the point. So there we have that dry brush on, which will help see what we're doing. Then I'm gonna go straight to the lenses. Like I said, I want this to be the fastest paint job ever. So I'm gonna go with Midnight Blue, which is an older Citadel paint. That's okay. And since I'm doing something pretty fine detail wise, I'm going to use my Raphael #1, which is a paintbrush I've come to really like. And so these Games Workshop paint pots, I don't really trust them. So I'm just going to get a little water on my brush so the bristles kind of have some water in them. And then I'm going to kind of mix it up right there. Yeah, that's about what I'm looking for. And then I'm just going to very carefully start at the side and go around the visor. Now, a paint scheme like this won't win you any awards, but what it will do is get you a tabletop quality model to play games with pretty quickly. Which again, is all I'm trying to do here is get this guy up very fast to a tabletop quality. So now you can barely see that dark blue in there, and that's okay because we're only just getting started on the lenses. So the lenses are where we're going to spend most of our time as far as actually adding some detail and quality to this. So we've got that lens started, and we did the whole thing in that midnight blue. Now I want to do a bit of highlighting and kind of shadowing. So I'm going to go with, those are all, I need to go find a little bit darker blue. Found my Flames of War, which is also an Army Painter brand, dark blue. That's what I'm going to use for the second layer of the lens. And I'm just going to put that on my wet palette over here. Now, one thing to remember is that I've got multiple paint pots here, as you can see, kind of in the edge of the frame there. Blue and red in particular, you want to kind of give their own paint pot because the pigments are very vibrant, and if you mix them, you end up very quickly with problems. So now, I want to go around the edges and the front and pick out the detail, but I want to leave kind of the bottom edge completely the midnight blue. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to start in the back and kind of towards the top especially.
Now, you may notice that there's a huge gap here in the paint scheme where I paint his visor and then do the base coat of the red and everything. And the problem, as it turns out, is I didn't stay underneath the camera very well. So a big part of the painting process gets cut out here. But it's a very basic paint process. I didn't do anything more than really just base coating and washing. The only thing that took more effort than that was the lenses. And I did do the night vision goggles. The top of those I did a bright green color. Hopefully the still shots will come through and you'll be able to see those a little better. But it really wasn't that difficult. The biggest deal was just taking my time and trying not to get any extra paint into the recesses after I washed. I think I did a pretty okay job, and you'll be able to see a still of that here at the end. But yeah, that's why there's a big gap in the paint processes, because I couldn't keep it all on camera. Okay, so like I said, there's a huge gap in the painting process here. I've already base coated and done all the lenses on the model. He's pretty well finished, except for I decided that the shoulder armor here and the red on his knee pad were both a little too dark. You can still tell they're red, but I wanted them to really pop and stand out and be easily visible. So again, there you can see what led to all this. And then, yeah, once I get it back in focus, I just carefully go around and paint the red onto the parts that I wanted that base coat to be. And I'm just really careful to avoid getting into the deep recesses and painting over where the wash really helped darken like the crevices in. I want to leave those so the detail pops out. Just do the same thing on the knee pad. Once I'm finished with all that, the model will be completely painted. The last couple things to do will be to put on a clear coat of matte varnish, and then to go back over it for the lenses, both the night vision goggles and across his visor, with a gloss varnish out of the bottle, but that's gonna have to wait. So here you can see the finished product next to an old school Exo Lord from Anvil Industries, and then you can see him next to both a normal Marine and a Primaris Marine, both from Games Workshop, done up as Celestial Lions. There you can really get a good idea of the size difference. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. This was, again, Anvil Industries Exo Lords models. They look great. The models are fantastic. They're power armor, so you can paint them super quick if you keep the scheme simple. You can do it in different colors besides black. If you wanted to do like a purple, for instance, you would spray prime with Army Painter Alien Purple, I think is the color, then give it a dry brush of a lighter purple, then just go over it with a black or a dark purple wash. All those are available. You can mix your own, which we've talked about before. Power armor is also good for glazes or contrast paints because of the way it settles into the recesses. You just have to prime with a white or do a zenithal with a gray and then a white over it. That always looks pretty sharp. So anyhow, I really enjoyed this model. It took me like an hour to paint it yesterday, other than waiting for the wash to dry. That was really the most time consuming part, was just waiting on that to dry. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe. If you want to see what we're up to next week, hit the notification bell. I believe we'll actually be able to get the painting competition models going, so hopefully that pans out. If not, we'll be back to work on Neo Nagoya. I've got some ideas for the interior of the transport hub, so that's probably what I'll work on next if the painting video falls through. I'm gonna do some interior detailing, and I've got something sort of different in mind for it. I just have to wait for parts to come in, so I'm excited to show you guys what I've got in mind for that. Big shout out and thank you to Anvil Industries. They've been great since we started working with them at the very start of the S.E.E.R project. Be sure to check out their models. The links will be in the description below. You'll be able to find the Exo Lords, the Daughters of the Burning Rose, and their regiments. They're all super modular, super customizable. You can use them for conversion parts. They're amazing. Definitely go check those out if you like, you know, sort of sci-fi leaning infantry. You can do modern and other things with them too, but they definitely lean towards the sci-fi side of things, which is great. And remember, if you want to support the channel, it's as easy as shopping at the links below, where you can pick up all the equipment and some of the paints that we used in today's video. You can also check us out on Patreon. Next month's campaign will include a short story where we get to see our heroine go charging into battle against the cephalid slavers again. Also, there's a specialized scenario for S.E.E.R coming up with that. Also, of course, when you subscribe to the Patreon, you get access to S.E.E.R, the playtest rules of it anyway. You can also buy us coffee at Buy Me a Coffee. It's always appreciated. Coffee is definitely the heart of the channel. And, of course, most of all, just continue watching the videos, share them with your friends, spread the word, and we'll appreciate that support probably more than anything else. Thank you all again for watching, and remember, at the Clock Tower, it's always game time.